everyone, my name is Chrissy and welcome to my channel. So I decided to combine June, July, and August wrap-ups into one video because I haven't really been reading as much and I haven't really read anything new in the past 3 months with exception to June, and there was only like 2 books I read that were new. So I am going to talk about the books that I have reread because I haven't really talked about them on this channel. I read them first years and years and years ago. But before I get to that, I did want to kind of explain my absence from BookTube for this last couple of months. It's not for any horrible reason. Rather, it's actually really great news for me and my partner of many years. I found out I was pregnant in June, and so I'm roughly 4 months along. First trimesters are rough, ladies, okay? At least they are for me. My first trimester was very, very tiring. I was sleeping a lot. My energy was just drained after work. I could not find it in myself to make videos like I used to. And in fact, I couldn't really even concentrate on reading. I would open up a new book, and it wasn't a bad start to the book, but I just get either really like kind of glassy-eyed or not really paying attention to what I was reading, so I'd have to like reread pages, and it just wasn't really getting me anywhere. And so I had no new material, and anytime I would start to say to myself, okay, I'm gonna make a video, I'd end up napping for about 5 hours, which I guess can no longer be considered a nap. It's rather just sleep at that point. But that's what would end up happening. I'm hoping that changes. I've been feeling my energy kind of peak up, so I'm hoping that with this time, I'm able to get back into the community and be back as an active participant instead of just every now and then watching videos and sometimes remembering to comment instead of just, being... I've also been proposed to, so that's new. So that's ended up happening. Engagement, baby, not in that order, but so lots of changes. With that said, I'm just going to jump now right into my wrap-up, what I have been reading. I got a Kindle for my birthday in July, and I got it fairly early. So I ended up rereading the entire manga series of Fruits Basket. For those of you who don't know what Fruits Basket is, it's a series where a girl named Toru ends up being kind of swept into the life of the Soma family. Now, the Somas have this curse upon them that says that there are going to be certain family members who are cursed by the zodiac and the Chinese zodiac, so that if they are hugged by someone of the opposite sex, they will turn into that animal. I feel like this series does a good job of tricking you into thinking that it's just going to be a feel-good manga and then ends up ripping your heart out with some of the storylines. But that's Fruits Basket in a nutshell. I read the collector's editions, which has more chapters per volume than when it was originally released in the manga form. So I read those 12 volumes, and I was also watching the new anime that comes with it. So I really like that series, and I think it's fantastic. If you're a big fan of Japanese animation or manga, and you like kind of more subdued storylines, because it's not a fighting anime like that. That would be interesting, though, if Toru got out boxing gloves and just boxed some people out. But I suggest people go check it out and see if it's your type of thing. Another thing I read was Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This is a reread for me. I read this back in my early 20s. And for those of you who don't know what Game of Thrones is, it's pretty much the Stark family gets shafted almost at every turn. That's pretty much the plot throughout the books that I read so far. So then the last 3 books I read are actually part of a series that I read when I was in my early 20s, around the same time that I was reading Game of Thrones. So I was going back to my 20s and my teens this summer. I was feeling that middle-life crisis, I guess. I'm in my 30s. I wanted to go back to a time where I didn't pay nearly as many bills. But anyway, the next 3 books that I read are part of what's called the Dark Hunter series by Sherilyn Kenyon. So one of the books that I came back to in this series is called Seize the Night. To give some brief information about the series, there's what's called daemons, which are quintessentially vampires. They suck out the soul instead of blood. And there are dark hunters, which are pretty much vampire hunters. And they also have characteristics of vampires. This is all based on the Greek pantheon, so Artemis is the one who makes dark hunters. The daemons come from the god Apollo because it's always Apollo's fault. And so that's kind of the quintessential gist of it. Daemons soul-sucking, dark hunters trying to kill off soul suckers. The dark hunters, find their one true love, and there's a way to get them out of this contract with Artemis. Seize the Night follows a character named Valerius, who was once a Roman general. and he did horrible things. But I think just about everyone in that time period probably did horrible things if they were a general or a commander at some point in time. Anyway, Valerius is kind of a loner because no one likes the Romans. So Valerius ends up meeting the other main character, Tabitha, and Tabitha is a self-proclaimed vampire hunter. She goes out and stakes out demons even though she's human by herself. She's kind of a wild child type character. A lot of characters look at her and think that she's never grown up, that she's too out there for all, adulthood. And these two characters end up meeting and falling in love, and, one of them ends up stabbing the other by accident. Love tropes. It's actually one of my favorite Dark Hunter novels, mainly because the two characters do have very different personalities, but I feel like the author did a good job in making them have chemistry, and making that chemistry work at a standpoint where I could see how they'd be attracted to one another. Where sometimes when you have two characters who are so opposite, you can't help but think, but would they really last? I don't really feel that with these two characters, because I feel like the similarities that they do have just would kind of help and be strengthened in a relationship that they have. The next book is Night Play, and I'm laughing because I'm looking back at my Goodreads, and I gave this a 2-star, but I don't really know why. I guess me in my 20s actually did not like this book very much, but me in my 30s actually likes this book kind of a lot. Night Play follows a character named Vane, who is a werewolf, but werewolves and werepeople work out very differently in this novel. They don't turn into like a half-man, half-wolf type thing when they transform. Instead, he turns into a full wolf. And, they have power dichotomies that are supposed to be very similar to wolf packs. And there's different types, so you have werewolves, you have werebears, and so on and so forth. And they don't need to change by moonlight. They can change kind of whenever. They're very powerful, you see. But Vane is the main guy character, and then a gal named Bride is the main girl character. Vane kind of falls head over heels in love with Bride the moment he sees her, and they end up being mates, which means that they need to kind of consummate their relationship, not just a physical tumbling in the sheets kind of way, but also with a certain ceremony that they have to complete. That's kind of the whole plot. There's other things going on. For example, vampires are trying to chase down Vane, and Bride has a crappy ex-boyfriend. But I don't know why I gave this 2 stars in my 20s. Probably because it's very, very corny in places. The things that Vane tells Bride sometimes, you're just like, that was a made-for-TV movie moment. That can get kind of grating at times, but rereading this, I liked the simplicity of the storyline, and I like that there was a lot of fluff between these characters. I think I just needed something that was a lot of feeling and heart in it. And Bride's a big girl, so I like that in the book, is she's not, this teeny petite thing. Instead, she's tall and she's, robust. So that's a nice thing that's in a romance book that I think needs to be more of. And the third and final one that I read from this series is called Unleash the Night. Follows a were-tiger. I would almost dare to say were-liger. Named Wern. W-R-E-N. And a gal named Marjorie. It looks like Marjorie, but it's Marguerite. But she goes by Maggie. Thankfully. And it's about these two getting together, that Maggie is the daughter of this politician dude who only wants Maggie to, follow the echelons of society. And Warren is kind of this outcast who is trying to find his place in the world. Or just trying to get by, really. Who's not Warren? Who's not? This one is probably my least favorite of the 3 I read. I still liked it. It just kind of follows very typical romance movie plots. I'm talking about like Lifetime movie plots where people are saying, you can't be with him because he's poor. But really, we're in what year, man? What year? And then you find out that, he's secretly very, very rich. Richer than the girl is, so. But for the most part, I did like this book. It's a fluff read, and it's not too bad. And plus, there's assassins, so, you can't hate it too much. So then, those are the books that I reread. Here are the books that were kind of new to me that I read. One is Sculpt Yourself by Savvy. I did do a book review of this, and I'll link that in the description below. I liked it. I thought that was a fun read. Another one I read is The Comic Book Story of Professional Wrestling, a hardcore, high-flying, no-holds-bar history of the one true sport by Aubrey Stitterson and Chris Marino. This was a graphic novel that I picked up from the library, and it was just about the history of professional wrestling. It was a very good, concise history. I know that there's probably a lot that got really condensed or not really put in, but I felt like it was a great summary of the one true sport that is pro wrestling. By all means, if you're a WWE fan or any type of professional wrestling fan, I heavily suggest you go pick up that book, because it explains kind of the companies, why certain companies thrived and why certain companies didn't, and kind of the traditions that ended up blooming more so than others. Then I also read a book called Chasing Graves by Ben Galley. This is a grim dark fantasy. I did do a book review of it for a blog tour, and so I'll link that in the description down below as well. But it pretty much is, what if when someone dies an unnatural death, you can pretty much enslave their spirit and make their spirit work for you. And that's the mindset that follows. It's based in the city that has a lot of corruption and a lot of people killing other people to get as many, spirit slaves as they can. It was a very interesting look. I liked the plot lines a lot, and I like grim dark stories, so it worked for me where you don't really like any of the characters because they're all kind of horrible in their own way. And last but not least, I read Geek Girls Don't Date Dukes by Gina Lamb. I did a book review of this book, and I'll link that down in the description below as well. It was kind of just a fluff piece of book that I read. Wasn't particularly the greatest, but it wasn't horrific either. About a girl who goes back in the past and naps herself a husband. By all means, let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought. And if you like this video, please hit that like button. If you like seeing this face talk about books, hit that subscribe button. Though it has been a while since I've recorded a video, so my apologies if this was a stuttering, stumbling mess of a video. But as always, may you get lost in a book.